This tank is one of the most surprising vehicles considering how many people think that this is indeed one of the tanks that has been infinitely power crept like most of the other tier 8 heavy tanks from tech trees in the game, and we're going to be seeing why that might not be the case and why it is actually secretly one of the nicest tanks to play in World of Tanks. And of course you don't have to pay any money for it, which makes it just that little bit better when you do manage to get it. Of course we are talking about the IS-3. We've got a game here which was kind of clutch. There isn't the highest damage total that you would ever see in an IS-3 for sure, but the whole point about it is that we managed to somehow pull out a win within this game, even against all odds, and having so much hit points down within this game. And given that there are 3 of us in a platoon, it was a really good one to showcase what this tank can do and the sort of things that you can kind of use this tank for in the game. So starting off in this matchup, we are on Pearl River. There'll be some more gameplays coming up which was very interesting as well, so stay tuned. But in Pearl River, obviously you've got a few things that you need to worry about when it comes to playing this map, and that is the left hand side of the map, the right hand side of the map, and the center of the map. There we go. Surprising that Wargaming's corridor maps are very dynamic in this game, but either way we go on the kind of right hand side of this map, and that is to primarily fight with a lot of the other heavy tanks, deal with them, and then start to deal with whatever's left in this game. So straight off the bat I'm realizing that we really do need to push this side. The whole platoon are kind of with me. We're over here, we're just trying to get rid of some of these tanks that are causing a bit of a problem. And you can see here we have a Renegade. Now obviously he manages to pen us quite easily, terribly aim shot there by me, but essentially the IS-3 doesn't have the best armor anymore, and that's all down to the fact that it gets this kind of, I guess, weird armor layout. It has the typical Soviet pike nose, which can be penned if you try and angle your vehicle, obviously finishing off that little EOC who tried to sneak up from behind, as we need to get rid of as many of these vehicles as quickly as possible so we can deal with the swath of enemies that are actually coming from behind us. And given that we're down by 3 tanks and 3,000 damage, yeah, we really need to start getting rid of these vehicles. But as a platoon, we've lost one of the platoon mates, unfortunately, as we kind of push this flank, but now we are going to have to work together, me and the T69 here, to be able to make it work. And given that we've done 2,200 damage, it's not a bad result, but we're going to need to start mopping up some of these tanks that are left alive, and the first one comes in the Progetto. Obviously, when you are in a matchup like this, you want to be focusing on the low health tanks as much as possible, especially ones that have a lot of alpha damage. Things like the Scorpion G, for example, because if this one gets a free shot into you, it can be really annoying because it's going to take about half of the hit points that we have left in this game. Obviously, removing the higher alpha tanks is going to make it a lot easier for trading when you do have the alpha that the IS-3 gets. This tank has 390 alpha. Obviously, as we talked about, armor is not the best on the hull, and also on the turret armor of the IS-3 you do have a main weak point which is right above the actual mantlet of the vehicle. This can be penned really easily if people have high enough caliber because it just is made out of paper. You also have these tiny cupolas which, trust me, do get penned every now and again, not reliably, but they do get penned. And so I wanted to give you that little bit of insight as to this tank if you're coming up against it, etc. Maybe you already know this, maybe you want to add some extra things that you might know about what's going on. Now I get spotted here within the center of the map, so I wasn't quite sure how this actually happened. My only logic would be that someone is over here, maybe in one of the bushes, that somehow managed to spot me as I went through the middle of the map. Now obviously one of my teammates in the T69 is in the center already, and there's no one in the center for them to be able to spot me, so I'm just wondering where on earth this tank actually is, because we don't want to get surprised by one of these guys coming up from behind. How in this game we've started to claw back the actual tanks within the game. We've picked up 6 enemies already within the IS-3, and it's been a lot of just kind of finishing off these low health tanks as they kind of make their way. Most of the tanks that we finished off in the last couple of shots have all been very low hit points. So it's nice to have that alpha to secure those damaging hits, whereas if you are in something like a T69, it might not have been guaranteed, even if you are an autoloader, because you may miss a shell and then they get behind cover or whatever. That alpha damage really does make the difference. And what's not even terrible about the IS-3, given that it's a heavy tank, is that the speed of the tank is not very bad. We are using turbo in the tank, that's to boost up the speed. We want to make sure that we can kind of stay competitive throughout the entirety of the fight when we're playing in heavy tanks like this that rely on being able to be quite aggressive and being able to kind of push into areas and just be a bit of a nuisance to opponents compared to some of the super heavies, which rely on being able to use armor to bounce shells and basically sit there and take the hits. Now, fully aiming the shot on the took there, which of course, as you know, when you need to hit a shot, it never does. When you don't need to hit a shot and someone's on 30 health, it always seems to hit. But either way, go for a little blind fire there. It still misses where we were aiming, so it goes into a rock anyway, but either way, not bad. Now, it is, a pretty dire situation. Now, the T69 in my platoon is 436 hit points, so is one-shottable by the SU-130 PM and can be quickly finished off by the Spatuk on the enemy team. Now, he highlighted that the enemy artillery is over here somewhere, so we went for a bit of a blind fire here. You never know, maybe you hit him, remove the RNG out of the game, would be much appreciated at this point in the game. But the main problem that we have now is that we don't really have much view range. Our best hope of view range in this game is the T69, which has decent view range, to be honest with you, but it isn't insanely brilliant. So in terms of what I'm thinking here is to try and just get spotted. We need to find out where these guys are. He does manage to catch a Panther here, but we have to go for a lucky shot. I mean, it would have been very lucky if we hit the Panther there, but you got to go for it sometimes because we're not going to get another opportunity anytime soon. And I guess now it's a case of trying to figure out where the enemies are going to be. But there's one key thing that I'm thinking is that the Spatuk is going to start making their way back to the base alongside whatever is left. And oh look, a SU-130 PM is indeed in the base next to the artillery. There's a surprise. And the 703, really nice play here. Probably without the 703 going up here, we may have ended up kind of ending up not getting the damage that we do in this game because he's able to spot for us, and the enemy tanks are going to start doing some silly things. So with the SU-130 PM looking like he's going to actually make the cross, we swap to HE rounds and hopefully we're able to hit. And we do a nice little 519 damage with HE, allowing the SU-130 PM to be finished off by the double pumper 703-2, securing us a little bit more damage in this game, and of course managing to increase our chances of winning now since we are up on the hit points. But obviously with the 703 where he is, the enemy artillery is going to come swooping in to try and do something. And at this point we're kind of deciding where we want to go, and I'm thinking maybe we go around over this way. I'm trying to just find out where the opponents are in this game, but yeah, at this point we're kind of thinking maybe it's time to start going towards the cap to pressure the opponents into coming to us so that we can hopefully do what we need to do, finish them off and come away with the win. And this is where like the dynamic duo-ness, or the having a decent platoon mate or a decent teammate who's kind of on the same wavelength is really nice. Now the T69 is going to try and move up to where you're seeing in like E7 and 8. I'm going for a few blind fires, maybe we hit the artillery, you never know, but at the end of the day we don't want to blind fire a whole lot because we only have 9 rounds left. Probably not ever going to use all of them, but you never know, maybe you need them. We can't just keep on blind firing continuously. But yeah, at this point I am deciding I just want to get spotted so we have an indication as to where the opponents are going to be, and maybe they then try and come up the hill to deal with me, and the T69 surprises them at that point to finish them off, and then yeah, we win the game. But it looks like the enemy team just want a cap, which is, or sit in the cap even, or sit basically in spawn not doing anything, which is often the case when it comes to tank destroyers and low health vehicles like the Panther. So yeah, we're going to have to try and make the play, and obviously since I am on the most amount of hit points, we really do need to kind of be the brute force for the T69 to kind of help me out and deal with some of the tanks that might be trying to come with us. And given that we've only got 4 minutes left in this game, we're going to have to make something do as quickly as possible to kind of get it moving and actually start doing stuff. Otherwise you're going to end up kind of being a bit in the middle area where you're not really doing anything, then you waste a bit of time and then you end up not doing anything again. So I'm coming up here, maybe thinking about just checking the middle to see if anything is actually coming up through the middle, and then deciding what we want to go and where we want to go from here. Obviously maybe we could have pushed in a little bit sooner, maybe pushed into the base, but it is a bit of that situation where you don't want to make any misplays and throw the game where an Epsilon is sat in a bush somewhere and just going to farm you up. So yeah, I'm just double checking if anyone is near the base, just checking if anyone's just coming up this way before we make the play, because you don't want to commit to one side and then they all jump in the cap circle, because it could happen, but unlikely, but you never know. Either way, given that no one seems to be around the cap, we are going to try and make a bit of a commitment into going to the enemy base. And yeah, that is exactly what we're going to try and do now, at least in a second. So with that being said, T69 is on the lookout, just checking if he can hit people that we may spot on our way towards the enemy cap circle. The whole point in going to the cap is to force the opponents to come to me, and therefore they can't just sit away in their own bush somewhere having fun. And so that's exactly what we do. And there's something really clever that comes on in a second that is kind of crucial as to how we end up winning this game. And yeah, you're going to see that in a second. But with the IS-3, obviously you're not the slowest tank in the world. It's actually quite quick to get up to top speed, which makes it really nice. And going up hills isn't the worst feeling in the world. It isn't the fastest by any means, but it certainly isn't terrible. And so here we decide, maybe there's someone over here, maybe the Spatuk's crossed and gone into the bushes. We don't really know at this point, so we've just got to keep our wits about us, but most likely the Spatuk is over on the right hand side. So given that, I'm going to turn around, and this is what we're doing when it comes to the idea of what we want to kind of aim to do. Now, because I'm here, if the Spatuk comes from behind me, my teammate in the T69 is going to be able to get a shot on them. There's no way that the Spatuk can actually hide from the shots if he can shoot me, so that's absolutely fine. We get spotted by an SU-1, well, the 14, the artillery, who's poked over the ridge, which is fine, and that's kind of going to alert the Spatuk into coming into behind me, and that's exactly what he does. And there you go, the first round, and then he realizes, oh no, I've made a mistake, and then ends up getting taken out, which is brilliant, exactly what we wanted. And it's just an artillery piece and the Panther left alive. But it's pretty tense now. We've got a minute left in this game to try and find out where both of these vehicles are to try and win the game. Now, I've got 6 enemies taken out in this game so far, but we are going to have to try and push wherever the SU is. We need to get rid of the artillery piece, otherwise it is curtains. And of course we need to find out where this Panther is, and yeah, I'm going to start moving back towards where we thought the Panther might actually be in the first place, coming through that central zone. And of course then the artillery gets spotted, can't get a shot on him, he's behind the rock. He does get hit once, which means he's a guaranteed one shot whenever he does get spotted. But oh no, the Panther 2 did manage to take out my teammate in the T69, which is not good, which means we are going to have to push the Panther 2 as soon as possible, get him out of the game, because then we're going to have to make a very, very quick turn to try and finish off the artillery in the 24 seconds that are left in this game. We don't have time to fully aim in this one. We do manage to finish him off, and that allows us to turn around, and we're going to be able to fully reload against the artillery piece, who is still moving and turning around, and we're going to fully aim this one. No thank you, Mr. Artillery, even if it does try and go in the mantler and we end up missing. But yeah, we finish off the game with 8 kills and a Radley Walters medal, and of course 3.8 thousand damage in this game with 500 assists, and of course a pretty solid game when it comes to playing World of Tanks, working together as a team to make the victory happen and force the opponents to try and do something other than just sit around hoping to get a draw. So with that being said, hopefully that gives you an idea as to the IS-3 in terms of the general performance and some of the things that you can do. But let's jump into a more professional level of IS-3 playing and see what the upper levels of the IS-3 really can do when everything goes your way, as opposed to going in this sort of way where you're having to force your way into the opponents. And so, based on not having a bot in the tank like the IS-3 like me, then what happens when a pro or someone that has very much a ton of experience playing World of Tanks jumps into this vehicle and comes away with a significantly better result? Well, that's exactly what we're going to see on this map. Now, obviously we're seeing Ruinberg. This map is one of the best ones for playing a heavy tank, and when you are in a kind of reasonable matchup, it's not terrible, but it's also not the best matchup that you can see in the game. There are tier 9s in the game which are much kind of more difficult to deal with than, of course, being top tier like we were in the previous game. And so when you have a lot of tier 9s in the game, you're going to have to play very well to deal with them and get rid of them, especially when they are the ones that are right next to you. There is the Tiger Mouse, there's the ST1 as well, or the STI, and of course you don't want to poke too much when you are coming up to this corner. Now, why is that? Well, it isn't actually for the Tiger Mouse and the ST1, it's actually for the TDs that often sit on this corner and can be a real problem when you do try and poke. Now, a lovely shot into the cupola of the ST1 there, which is fantastic. The quicker you can get rid of the people on the corner, the more you can play then when it comes to trying to deal with some of the guys that are going to be unspotted behind the bush directly in front where the M3Y was. But of course you don't want to poke around too much. The only problem with coming here, however, is that you do have teammates that can be a bit of a pain. Now, the Emil 1, I'm sure that he's trying to do his best trying to deal with some of these vehicles, and yes, it does work to a degree, but it can be annoying when you're having to deal with your teammates alongside the enemies when you are trying to do consistent damage in your vehicles. But in this game, of course, teammates can be a bit of an issue when it comes to ending up finished off in the garage. So yeah, we're going to see how he's going to fare. Now, obviously, at the moment, they are down by about 1,000 hit points, but it doesn't mean a whole lot at the beginning of the game. It could just be one tank ended up throwing themselves away at the beginning, and it can all change yet again. So we're going to see what exactly happens here. So with the STI and the Tiger Mouse being here, and of course the M3Y over here, you can be in a bit of a situation where you don't feel like you want to poke. But if you don't poke and you aren't trying to actually play the game, you can often end up just prolonging the game, and therefore you end up actually wasting time, at which point the tanks that are kind of making their way behind and up against the M6Y behind him can start to get around behind you, and then it ends up in a sausage sandwich. And when you're in a sausage sandwich, yeah, you don't want to be the sausage, you want to be the buns going around everyone. So so far 2.6k damage in the IS-3, which is pretty decent, but you know, there is still plenty more stuff that you need to do if you want to win this game. And yeah, pretty close game as well, but with 3k damage down and the Tiger Mouse kind of sitting out in the open, this is kind of what you want to see. Obviously, Tiger Mouse does have a tiny little cupola, and it is difficult to actually hit, but when you're at such close range with the IS-3, like you want to be when you are playing some of these kind of vehicles that don't have the best accuracy, then that is exactly what is kind of needed. And the M3Y over angles his vehicle, allowing the IS-3 to finish him off, and now he has the perfect opportunity to make a flanking play of his own and come round behind to avoid the encirclement and actually encircle the encirclers, which is a bit of a weird one, but you know, it does work. And here you go, finds himself a nice little Tiger P here. Obviously, Tiger P bounces the round, and of course then ends up bouncing the round off of the Tiger P. So yeah, not ideal. And now a little kind of Frencher comes up from behind, but ends up back in the garage, so that's absolutely fine. TS5 is spotted now, but he wasn't actually located in the middle anymore, allowing the free range to start trying to deal with the Tiger P, who is of course feeling a little bit worse for wear in a tier 9 game, and of course with basically no armor, as we all know with the Tiger P, just basically a worse version of the Tiger, as the armor that you are supposed to get never really truly works, and you get all of the negatives of you know, trading your kind of gun statistics to get the armor in quotation marks, that it doesn't get. So now that the T-32 has kind of overcommitted over to the flank, that allows a couple of shots into this guy, but he has to be a little bit careful of the Charfutur, who's kind of being a bit of a tourist here, exposing himself to everyone on the enemy team. Not the best idea when you're in a paper tank like the Char, but either way, another free shot of damage in there, picking up over 5,000, and this is kind of the pinnacle of where I think that IS-3 can be. It really does feel amazing when you do play this tank, and the reload of the vehicle, about 10.5 seconds when you're using bounty equipment. Obviously if you're using bond equipment, slightly better, but not insanely better. And so essentially looking at about a 10-second reload with equipment on this vehicle if you are using a rammer. Obviously TS5 is behind him or to the rear of the vehicle, but he needs to push down and get rid of the T-32 to help out the team and kind of come away with the win. So taking a few hits here is fine, because now he is able to help his team out, unlock them from their position, and they can start playing again. At least until the VKK ends up back in the garage, so yeah, not ideal. But obviously with a TS5, when you're facing it frontally with a tank with not the greatest of accuracy, you're going to have to find a way of getting closer to it so you can improve your chances of hitting the vehicle, because you're not firing at range, you're not trying to snipe cupolas or snipe the lower plate of the TS5. So instead of kind of sitting there and trying to poke him, he does come to here, getting into a little bit of a hold down spot using the rubble. Obviously Ruinberg, one of the better maps for being able to do that, which yeah is pretty decent. But here is a Charfutur 4 who's now going all the way around, decides to drive into the building. Not quite sure what the Char's doing here, but maybe he isn't reloaded. Apparently he is, and he misses the shot. So yeah, luckily the Char didn't have his brain completely switched on in this game, and so ends up getting getting finished off, which is fantastic. And now it's time for the TS5 to be removed, or at least hopefully. But there's still a Super Hellcat, which even though is a tier 7 vehicle and shouldn't really pose a massive threat, when you're on 538 hit points, you cannot afford to take one hit, because that will mean that you are going to have to deal with potentially getting one shot by the TS5. But luckily the TS5 has to aim at the Emil 2, and so in aiming at the Emil 2 exposes the side armor of the vehicle, and now the TS is in a really dire situation where essentially all that has to happen is both of them poke at the same time and he can't kill them both, which is, you know, the ultimate kind of thing that you want to see. Now, what you're seeing the player here do is when he comes around the corner, rather than kind of exposing the front of the vehicle like you can see here with the pike nose, is that he actually overextends so that the first bit of armor is actually kind of the rear of the side. So when it comes to looking behind the ridge, it's kind of only the side armor that you can see of the IS-3, which is awesome. But either way, the Emil 2 finishes off the TS5 here, and with 6,988 damage done, it is an amazing result so far. But obviously they want to win this game. They are both very, very low. However, the IS-3 has enough to hit points to probably take about 2 hits from the Super Hellcat, so he's got the health to actually deal with this guy, and given that he is only on a 1 shot for the IS-3, it would have to go severely wrong for both of them to get taken out, and essentially, yeah, he would have to hit 4 consecutive shots on all of the opponents in terms of the Super Hellcat, that is, to finish them all off. But with the HE round loaded, it should be able to pen the Super Hellcat. It is a bit risky loading HE, I won't lie, because of the fact that the Super Hellcat does have spaced armor on it, or at least very small thin plates of spaced armor. If you aim correctly, you should never really bounce off of the Super, but it is possible to do that, so yeah, you just have to be a little bit careful. But it looks like the Super Hellcat is still in the position that he was in, and yeah, and even better, he's not actually there. So yeah, finishes him off and ends up winning the game for 7,279 damage, nearly getting a pools medal in this one. But either way, I really enjoyed playing the IS-3 and getting myself up to the T10 on the main account on World of Tanks. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed watching both mine and the pro players game in the IS-3. And if you did enjoy, make sure to subscribe and of course like the video. And obviously let me know if there are any tanks that you feel are significantly underrated in World of Tanks, as these are some of the most interesting vehicles to check out. And if you want to see some more gameplay and tank reviews, then have a look on screen right now for the playlist that has all of those in one. And I will catch you there. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.